The first, I'm going to move on after a very successful world-class day yesterday in Moore Park. He said he's hoarse, not because he was speaking on the boards, because there were so many farmers there, he talked to nearly every one of them himself. Dr. Frank O'Mara, the head of research in Teagasc. So I'll get you to introduce yourself, and just, I suppose, you've been busily writing there, so you've a few points to say as well.
Thanks, Peter. Just in case I forgot a few things, I'm getting old, so I have to write down what I want to say now. So thanks for the introduction. My name is Frank O'Mara. I'm Director of Research in Teagasc. Teagasc is obviously well known for its advisory activities, also its education, and there's a big component of research which I'm in charge of. In the research side, we've over 800 people come to work in Teagasc every day to carry out research. That includes permanent staff and a whole heap of PhD students. And we spend about 67 million a year on our research, and a lot of that is you know, I suppose publicly funded, public good research, but we work a lot with companies right across the agri-food industry, and every year we would have what we call a kind of a meaningful relationship, as in money changes hands, with about 250 companies. That's either carrying out some aspect of research with them or providing some sort of specialised service to them. So in terms of AgTech, and look, I think the ag industry is on a journey into the whole realm of using technology, and by saying it's on a journey, I want to make the point we're not starting at the very start. Like, the ag industry has been a big user of technology for many years, and you know, we are world leading in some aspects of that. Probably the most advanced area we are is in terms of developing and using large databases. So for instance, if you look at the animal area, the Department of Agriculture have this database on every animal in the country, where it goes, when it goes there, when it's slaughtered. There's a picture taken of the carcass when it's slaughtered, and there's a huge database there. And the most meaningful manifestation of that, I guess, is in Irish Cattle Breeding Federation use that for animal breeding. So we're big users of data there. We have the biggest genomics project in the world. We're genotyping over 1 million cattle at this stage as part of that project. No other countries doing anything like that, and genomics is a big data. That's a big data project. So we're very much on a journey, but I think there's a long way to go, and I think there's huge opportunity for Ireland in the smart agriculture area, as we call it. And I suppose our vision, or my vision of where, you know, what do we mean by that? Well, I think we should be trying to be the most data-driven agriculture in the world, and by that I mean that we make our decisions about what to do in terms of either day-to-day management on a farm, or in terms of the strategic direction of a farm, based on data, not on a blueprint, or not on a formula, or not on what I did last year, but based on real data, and generally real-time data. So as Peter mentioned, we had a big event yesterday down in Moore Park. We had over 10,000 dairy farmers at it, and you know, looking around at those people, like they're you know, very hard businessmen really, and businesswomen. And I suppose in the context of thinking of today's seminar, I was saying, right, well, what do they think or do about technology, apart from obviously using it in their day-to-day business, like in terms of breeding and so on? Where would they see a niche for new technology applications? And I can see 3 areas. One, mentioned already, grass. You know, we grow grass, but the level of precision with which you can feed grass in comparison to animals that are indoors on controlled diets is, you know, we're a long way from that level of precision. So being able to measure and to utilise grass using technology is one key, I think, objective that farmers would buy into. The other is second is in terms of managing their animals. So managing their animals both in terms of what I mentioned already, breeding and picking out the best bull to match with a cow and so on, but also managing animals from the point of view of getting them back in calf. That's a key challenge every year on farms, and managing the health of animals. So I think there's lots of opportunity there that farmers would buy into in terms of technology to help them with that. And the third very big area that farmers would certainly buy into technology is around labour saving. You know, it's a huge challenge on all farms, not just dairy farms now. So where there are opportunities to save labour, and that's both out on the farm and that's in the office. You know, both spheres have opportunities for that. Last week we had a big event for tillage farmers, not as many tillage farmers in Ireland obviously, but we still had about 3,000 tillage farms in Oak Park, and they are big users of technology. You know, they are, I think, probably ahead maybe of the dairy guys in terms of applying new technologies on their farms. And again, for those farms, it's around machinery efficiency, getting a bit more out of the machinery, the very, very expensive machinery they have on their farms. It's around variable application rates of expensive inputs, whether that's fertilizer or sprays, and it's around monitoring of their crops for pests, for diseases, for yield. I think they're the areas that tillage farmers would be interested in and are already, I guess, applying those technologies. So before, just one word to finish then, which is a word of caution really. You know, it's very easy to dream up of great new things we can do with technology and say, God, that would be brilliant to have. But I'm always chastened. I remember speaking to a person in the agri-food industry, and I was actually trying to persuade him to give us a few bob for some bit of research we wanted to do, and I was saying to him, look, I know it's a low margin business, and I said, I have to correct you, it's a no margin business. He shouted down the phone to me. And look, we need to be that's a little bit of an exaggeration on his part, but you know, farming is not a highly profitable business. You know, it's a low margin business, so whatever technologies that people develop, you know, they have to be low cost, and I think they have to be driven to solve a problem that farmers want to solve, not I'll invent something great and then I'll try and persuade farmers to use it. It can't be a technology chasing a use. It has to be a problem looking for a technology to solve it.
Okay, that's actually a good point to move over to Professor William Donnelly. And I've heard about William a good bit. The first time we've met, and I talked to him on the phone about the legend. I don't know if that's a big enough word, but I mean reading actually his biography, and I asked him, did he write it himself or did someone else write it? Because it actually read very, very well. But I mean, he really has done so much work in the Southeast and the vision. And that's what we're talking about, a vision to basically create the ecosystem for jobs to be created. And then no more than in Galway with MedTech, you know, those companies coming in with new people and skills spinning off for more jobs. So I think that is the kind of the vision that we're trying to create in MedTech. And also trying to look at what technologies are out there, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I suppose on that point, the technologies that are out there, to kind of, are they of use to agriculture or do we need new ones? And I suppose I might just get you a little bit to introduce yourself, and again, what is your vision for this area?
Okay, I'm Willie Donnelly. I'm actually a convert to agriculture thanks to Teagasc, and converts can be quite dangerous because they can be fanatical, so I try not to be fanatical. But from my own experience, I suppose my background is in the telecommunications industry. I'm the founder of the TSG, Telecommunications Software and Systems Group, and it has become, it's 150 researchers in Waterford, and we're one of the world leaders in the whole area of mobile services. Now, if you look at the telecommunications industry, when I started, the internet was only becoming, you know, it was an investigation from a research perspective. Now, if you look at the internet and see how the internet has transformed society, this is in an industry that's been one of the most conservative industries up to that. I mean, the telecommunications industry was a hugely conservative industry which was controlled globally by national interests. And technology and disruptive technology transformed that industry. And there's a lesson there to be learned for other industries, particularly in the agricultural industry. And what the disruptive technology did was it changed the view of the industry as delivering a product to delivering a service. And I suppose you could say the same thing about about agriculture. Is quite often we talk about the product, we talk about the milk, we talk about the cereals, etc., etc. But the actual thing to focus in on is what service are we delivering. And again, a lot of the work we're doing at the moment is in the Internet of Things. And again, you can see there the shift from manufacturing, from going through the same phase from a product to a service to an experience. Now, when I first heard of this, kind of now industry is more looking at the consumer experience. I was a bit taken aback because I didn't know what it meant. If you are, you know, manufacturing, we say furniture, if you're manufacturing drugs, if you're manufacturing whatever, what do we mean by experience? Well, what we actually mean is that the consumer is looking at their lifestyle, they're looking at how they live their life, and they're looking at how these products enhance it. And if you think about that in terms of agriculture, we're going through a same major disruption within agriculture, because it's no longer just about food. It's about the quality of the food. It's about the origin of the food. It's about the impact of agriculture on the environment. It's about our it's about the how the consumer sees food from a nutritional perspective, from a health perspective, and as say from a lifestyle perspective. So the question has to be, how does Ireland respond to that? I mean, we are a global exporter of our food, so we don't produce our food for ourselves. So what's important for us is, how does the consumer in China, how does the consumer in Germany see our products? And that's, I feel, is where technology has a huge impact on how we continue to develop our agriculture industry. I think there are three things. One is, first and foremost, obviously with the huge growth in the population and the demand on higher quality food, particularly protein, we don't have enough land that is not being used in agriculture to produce the amount of food that's needed. So that means that we have to produce more food on the amount of land that we have. But the second problem we have is that the consumer is concerned about the use of chemicals and concerned about the environment. So we have to actually address those. So where I see the application of ICT and technology, I think the key point that Peter said was, it's not about finding new solutions. It's actually about applying the solutions that are already out there and enhancing them to the industry. So for instance, sensor technologies. Sensor technologies are already in the marketplace, being used, for instance, in smart cities, being used in manufacturing. Those technologies can be applied to agriculture. But more importantly, I would say, to finish, there are three things that to me are very important. The first one is to have a systems approach. So what we have at the moment is, and it's very much like what happened in the telecommunications industry, we have discrete solutions for discrete problems. What we need to do is to look at the end-to-end and how we develop a system solution. So it's really from the farm right up to the table, right? The challenge really is how we actually integrate information from the farm into the processor, into the retailer. The second one is we need to look at the whole area of food security. Increasingly, people want to know, say, where food is coming from. So the question is, if there is an issue around a particular product, can we trace it back? Can we identify where it originated from? And can we actually identify other similar products that came from the same location? Can we guarantee, if we have beef that's produced in Tipperary and goes to the US, how can we trace that to ensure that when we say it's Irish, we can guarantee it's Irish? Mm-hmm. The second thing is, we've got to look at the environment, and we've got to be able to guarantee, when we say we have a green product, and we see this increasingly, for instance, in terms of baby formula. China, who we're a major supplier to, and actually has shifted the emphasis from New Zealand to Ireland, one of the things they want to know is, is this produced in an environmental way? And that's another area where we can use technology. So as a kind of starting point, I'll finish there. Okay,
no problem. And we'll come back to some of those points. Well, next I'll go to Patrick Barrett. And I just look at his title, Agriculture Inspector at the Department of Agriculture. Normally you talk about inspectors, you talk about going out on farms or whatever. So I mean, knowing the conversations we've had, it's much bigger. And one of the things, and there was an event in Kilkenny recently, that shift in CAP that's kind of happening and it's being pushed a different way, away from the decoupling or away from everything, and into Pillar 2 and more focus on technology across Europe. So just a little bit about yourself, I suppose, and where you see ICT going, and also where the shift in CAP will bring us as well. Okay, might move the speaker down.
Sure. Thanks very much for the introduction, Peter, and good morning, everybody. I'm Patrick Barrett, and I work in the research division in the Department of Agriculture, and I suppose we're part of the innovation chain that starts at the farming level and tries to work its whole way through to the consumer. And I think that the message that would really be brought up by Barry, Frank and Willie today is like Ireland wants to be at the forefront of producing eco-healthy food. And in between that, we have our farmers, we have our SMEs, we have our AgriTech, our agri-food companies. And they are trying to deliver this diversity in our food production system, one that respects the need to manage for natural resources, it respects the need to deliver healthy and nutritious food for the consumer, and it's trying to deliver on that to be a world leader. And I suppose we're saying that the economics and the environmental elements need to go hand in hand in our system. So in our division of what Frank practically showed what can be done on the ground and what Willie has said can be brought from the ICT sector is trying to integrate technologies to help us to do this. And this technology can be ICT, it can be bioeconomy, it can be circular economy principles, areas where, first of all, we're trying to be much more carbon efficient in our production of food. We're trying to circularize materials in the food production system so there's less waste and we're more resource efficient, and we're using our bioresources to replace the use of fossil fuels within the system. And ultimately that we're replacing the use of chemicals with biology, and that our food is becoming much more eco-healthy. So that's the kind of vision of what we're trying to do with the system. But what we have to ask ourselves is, how are we going to go about to do this? And it's very interesting today to see the lead being taken by the local enterprise and by Tipperary County Council and by the South East region in general through their action plan for jobs, because what we're seeing is a region reacting from the bottom up. And what the system from the department, from Teagasc, from the institutions, the academic institutions, we have a very rich system, and what we need to do is talk and work together in much deeper collaboration. And what the system needs to allow to do is to allow us to work in this way over long periods of time with the right types of resources, that we can deal with the risks and rewards that are available with, because it's risky bringing in new science, bringing in new technologies into the system, diffusing that onto the ground. They come with costs, but there's actually, it's one of the things Frank raised, but what we need to really identify is the value of doing this. And the value there, we spoke to the major multinational technology providers about introducing ICT into the agricultural system. And they said, we need to really understand our use cases. What are we doing from the moment we get up in the morning to the moment we go to bed in the evening, where technology or bioeconomy or circular economy principles can make our job a lot easier. So this is what we have to try and achieve. And I suppose one of the key things is we need to work at both the regional level and the national level. And I think the opportunities are there for Ireland, and it's up to us now to try and capture that together and harness this in a really strong collaborative system.
And coming from CAP in Europe, I mean, are you seeing a shift there to try and encourage more ICT and encourage more AgTech in?
I think that message is really strongly being put forward, that the discussion is opening on how European funds are going to be used. So we had the discussion this week on the future of European finance that was proposed, and it looked at how money might be used in CAP or regional funds or in research and innovation. So the drive is to look for the future towards the innovation community. The innovator is going to be one of the key people to try and drive this eco-healthy food production system. So at national level and at CAP level, yeah, we can see a discussion is going to take place that money could be focused more towards innovation and more away from where it has been used before. This would be a difficult discussion for everybody, but this is a place where we're going to go to, and everybody needs to gear themselves up to understand that the opportunities are there to be harnessed. Frank has kind of outlined them very practically on the ground. Willie has kind of said how we can really use the academic system and use the opportunities that are there to work together to do this.
Yeah. I'm just know I'm tight on time, whatever, in this session. I know it leads into my very final session, so I'm conscious of that. But I want to make sure, the audience, get to ask the questions. I don't know if there's any coming in on Twitter. I was trying to flick down through it, I didn't see any specifically. But hands up if anyone has a question or has a point that they want to make, so we can get we don't waste time, I suppose, getting the microphone. So if anyone has just put their hands up. I'm going to throw it open to three. I mean, what is the biggest roadblock now that people aren't working together, that we're not moving this? Because I suppose I'll make another statement. I mean, I think we are behind the curve in other countries, be it America, be it Israel, which is very focused on the AgTech area. We are behind the curve on AgTech, where basically there's no reason why we should be. We should be actually the ones leading it. So I suppose the blockages and how can we get ahead of the curve? Willie, I might throw that to you first.
Yeah, I think the first block is, as I said, I come from the telecoms industry, and the problem with the telecoms industry was proprietary systems. So the first block is, and Frank talked about great databases that we have in the industry, is we should really focus on how to actually get those systems that are already there to talk to each other. So, for instance, if I'm sure most of you farmers here that you have tractors that have a lot of technology on it that collect a lot of data, but it's not shared with other systems you have on the farm. So the first thing we need to do is we have to make sure that people focus on interoperability so that we can share information from different parts of the farm and from different services that are being delivered to the farmer. The second thing is that we need to focus more on not data but on decision support systems. So if you're a farmer like any other industry, the data itself has no intrinsic value. What has a value is the knowledge that you can actually mine from that data. So we need to focus much more on decision support systems. And I think the third one is that in terms of the food delivery chain, we need to look at much stronger collaboration across that delivery chain so that the information can be shared.
Frank?
Yeah, I think I don't see huge blockages. I see more opportunity than blockages. You mentioned Israel and you mentioned the US, and certainly look, in some sectors Israel will be way ahead of us in the horticulture sector in particular, but that's a big part of their industry. The US and I suppose look, the machinery manufacturers have really pushed out the boat in terms of technology for tillage farming, and it's not that we're far behind, I think, most countries, but it's a small enough sector for us in Ireland. For me, while those sectors are important and we need to ensure that their technology needs are well met, for us the big opportunity is really the grass-based livestock production. And there's not really, I don't think, anybody further advanced than us in relation to the use of technology in that sector. And I think we're further ahead probably in some regards in ruminant production, in particular in dairy production, and the use of technology than most other countries. So I think for us that's probably the biggest opportunity to become world leaders. I think that doesn't mean to say that we say, well, the tillage sector can look after itself. I think we have to be us as a research organisation with a responsibility for all agriculture has to be fully aware and fully involved in whatever technology developments are there for that sector. But I think the area where we're probably never going to be a world leader in that, but we can be a world leader in particular on the dairy sector. And Willie talked about all the kind of advantages our dairy industry has. It's seen as positive from an environmental point of view. It's its production model being based on family farms. That's a real strength now when you go about marketing food. So we've all those great underpinning blocks to our dairy industry, and I think if we can add on that it's the most data-driven industry in the world. And again, just to say what I mean by that is that we're using data to make our decisions. I think we have an opportunity both to enhance our dairy industry and to build an AgTech sector on top of that. So to me it's more opportunities, and the big blockage is our imagination, as always in these things. What can we see that can be done?
Yeah.
We have to be realistic that food production is a carbon intensive business, and in the way it's established today, there is a need to have inputs into the system that are expensive for the farmer, and this challenges the environmental and the natural resources that the whole food system and dairy system is built on. So I think all agriculture across the world faces these types of challenges, and the response of countries is key to who becomes the world leader in food production in a sustainable manner. And I suppose what the Irish system is trying to do is trying to lead the way, both from organisations like Teagasc, academic institutions, the farmers on the ground and the industry, the SMEs. They're trying to work with the system, introduce the latest science and technologies that are trying to drive towards the ultimate vision of sustainability. And this is achievable. We can increase the carbon efficiency. We can replace chemicals with biology. We just need the innovation, time and space to do this. And I suppose there's clocks ticking in terms of climate change agreements and in terms of environmental regulations that we have to match up to. But the ultimate goal is the chance to produce eco-healthy food of differentiated quality. And I think the Irish system has the ability to do this. So that's our challenge, and that's what the system is rising to. I could just make one comment. If we could look for best practice in other countries, it's quite interesting if we look at the Finnish system. So they had an issue in terms of managing their water resources versus animal production and crop production. And they have a nutrient recovery program which looks to recover N and P from maybe wastewater or from different systems. And they've built a whole innovation ecosystem where they're trying to deal with the environmental problem but also lead to production of biofertilizers that potentially could be exported around the world. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there, which is up to the Irish system to investigate and see if it's something that we should build on.
Frank is jumping to get in here.
It's only a very brief comment. Look, I think both questioners have raised very pertinent points. I'm not going to address those directly, but just say, look, every industry has challenges, no matter what industry it is. And I think what today is about is seeing, well, where can AgTech help us with those challenges? Those challenges, or versions of them, have always existed and will always exist. So AgTech gives us another tool, really, to try to tackle some of those issues.
Yeah, I would agree with Frank. I mean, ourselves and Teagasc have been looking at some scenarios, a lot of scenarios around this. I mean, we already know there are sensors that we can put in the ground that can monitor the actual makeup of the soil itself, can understand what's happening there, particularly in terms of chemicals and how those chemicals are disposed of, and can help farmers to better regulate the use of fertilizers and of spraying on the land. Secondly, better control in terms of real-time information. It was mentioned by Barry O'Sullivan, real-time information on the weather patterns in local areas, and using that to make decisions about when you spray and when you use fertilizers on a particular field. But the last thing is, in terms of the global challenge of food and food delivery, waste is the big challenge. And that's why I mentioned this fact about the food delivery chain. If we can develop a just-in-time system where food is delivered to the consumer when it's needed in a more real-time way, and that means better control over the production of that food on the land, that's a huge challenge. But 40% of the food is being wasted, and that is really, for the industry, I think, is the area that we need to focus on.